Hey guys, Tracy, otherwise known as Healthy Happy Momsy here, and today's Go Live's a little bit different. As I'm getting a notification, had an appointment this morning that kind of went a little bit off track, so I apologize for the sunglasses, but I'm outside and tried to do it without it. A little bit bright out here, so anyway, here we go. Now I'm not quite squinting as bad, but anyway. So today's topic for Celiac Awareness Month is celiac versus non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And I have notes here, so it's going to be fun because I'm going to try to juggle both the phone and my notes, so I apologize in advance. It's a little bit easier to do this usually on my laptop in my office, but we're just rolling with it. So celiac disease versus non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Celiac, we talked about that yesterday. That is confirmed through medical diagnosis, through blood tests, through some other stuff. Well, I'll get into the specifics about that, but there are specific criteria for actually being diagnosed with celiac. However, one of the other areas when it comes to gluten and gluten issues would be non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And there's some challenging aspects to that. So non-celiac gluten sensitivity, the prevalence of it is actually about 6 times more than celiac. So celiac is in about 1% of the population, and non-celiac gluten sensitivity is about 6% of the population. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity does not have the damage done in the, it doesn't have the villus atrophy, and there aren't antibodies present. The antibodies that are present in celiac are not necessarily present in non-celiac gluten sensitivity. However, as I was looking through some of the research, hey Michelle, as I looked through some of the research talking about what tests can be done, it's very controversial because there are some different areas that you can look for some inflammation, but a person with non-celiac gluten sensitivity can test positive for antibodies to gliadin. So there was one specific area that they could look for it. But non-celiac gluten sensitivity is defined as a non-allergic and non-autoimmune condition in which the consumption of gluten can lead to symptoms similar to celiac disease. So non-celiac gluten sensitivity, this is so complicated because we talked about with celiac, some patients know they have it and some don't. Oh, Michelle, you've got gluten sensitivity. I'd love to know how you were diagnosed, if they actually used testing or if it was just the process of elimination for you, because this has been it's actually a personal issue right now with a family member, but I'd love to hear about your story there. So if you want to share that either privately on here, that would be awesome. But non-celiac gluten sensitivity manifests as GI, or it could manifest as non-GI, which occurs after the ingestion of gluten and improves with gluten withdrawal. So I looked in some of the clinical data, like I said, and the Journal of Gastroenterology and Hepatology, I think that's how you say it, NCGS is an umbrella, is how they define it, is an umbrella that has been associated with a wide range of, like I said, both GI and non-GI symptoms that respond to gluten restrictions and occur with gluten ingestion. So symptoms, and it's so varying. Because as I looked through a couple of different journals, symptoms can include bloating, abdominal discomfort and pain, altered bowel habits, flatulence, rash, fatigue, headaches, mental disturbances, irritability, depression, bone and joint pain, and even ADHD. When I was also looking at the, oh gosh, now I can't read my writing. It was a nutrition journal. Anxiety, fibromyalgia, fatigue, and foggy mind. And then also in the final journal article that I was looking at, okay, sorry, I'm not gonna have the actual journal article. Sorry for the moving camera here. Numbness, joint pain, and diarrhea or constipation, which, people think about the diarrhea as the classic symptom for celiac, but a lot of people actually have the constipation side of things as well, hence the altered bowel habits. So it can really start to look like celiac, but then people get frustrated when they go get tested for celiac and it's negative. Nervous system and the GI. So what are some of the complications though when you've got the non-celiac gluten sensitivity and how it can manifest and start to cause other issues? So the nervous system and the GI tract are linked together. So when the nervous system is impacted by the GI tract, basically kind of a hiccup will happen. Sorry, I'm reading my notes and trying to do this. The nervous system and the GI tract are linked. So when there's a hiccup in the GI tract, it can affect how the brain functions and the immune system responds. So hence, there's lots of different things that can start going on with the non-celiac gluten sensitivity. The other part of this is, and I know a lot of people are like, is it really the gluten? Is it really celiac? Or what about all the GMO? So of course, as we know, GMOs were introduced in the 1990s, and there's a great book that I read called Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis that talked even more about this. But there's been an increase in research, and what that shows is that the safety of GMOs, as we know, in people, it has not been established. The risks have been shown, and there was actually a huge lawsuit regarding GMOs a few months back about a person who developed lymphoma, I believe it was. I know it was a cancer, but it was linked to the fact that he was actually a custodian and all the GMOs that he was exposed to. But anyway, with the increase in GMOs, what happens is that it's developing new proteins in wheat, and they have not been previously to that, they haven't been introduced to people. So what happens is that gut-associated lymphoid tissue, also known as GALT, sees these new proteins as foreign and potentially harmful. So of course, if something is foreign and potentially harmful, what happens in the body? It goes and attacks them. So that's exactly what's happening. Is instead of absorbing the nutrition from the modified wheat, the body will then attack it and break it down, which creates damage to the intestinal lining. Hence, you've got the damage in the intestinal lining, and we've all looked at this before. As I referenced yesterday, the gut biome, there's a ton of research that has been done, especially recently on the gut biome, because of the impact of the gut biome on the overall health as far as the immune system. But it also has a decrease. There was one of the references actually talked about a decrease in the number of T cells in the intestinal tissue. That was one area to show the areas, or show non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And then also another area that was being referenced was the wheat amylase trypsin inhibition, ATI, that's proposed as a major stimulator of innate immune cells, so gliadin antibodies. So that was the gliadin antibody testing that was referenced. Actually, that would be in 2 of the different journals that I was looking at. So celiac can be confirmed with testing, which that's one of the other go lives that I'll do. I'll talk a little bit about that process. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity happens to test negative to celiac, but it would be people who have similar symptoms to celiac, but don't actually qualify or test positive for celiac, but benefit from a non-gluten diet. Michelle, years and years of research, huge range of symptoms, chronic yeast infections, yep, definitely. Never would have related to joint pain, constipation, bloating was insane, joint pain, fatigue. The list is crazy. Yeah, and you know what? Actually, Michelle, that is very similar to how my daughter was diagnosed, and I'll talk a little bit about this on another one, but her diagnosis is actually how we got my diagnosis. And the yeast infections are actually, if you look at Ann Louise Gettleman's book, it's called The Fat Flush Plan. She is a nutritionist who was affiliated with the Pritikin Institute. And when I read the Fat Flush Plan, this was one of the things that opened my eyes. But she talks about food intolerances, and I also came across something that talked about food intolerance and food sensitivity, which are different. But food intolerance, one of the things to watch for is an increase in the growth of yeast is actually a huge indicator of a food intolerance. So that's awesome that you were able to figure out what was triggering your food intolerance or what was triggering your sensitivity. And hopefully all those symptoms are under control. I can definitely relate to that, and again, I'll share a little bit more about my story on another one. But I hope that this is helpful for you guys, and like I said, Celiac Awareness Month, so I'll be doing these lives every day, around 12:30, and apparently I'll be doing them regardless of where I am. So I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you for tuning in. If you find this helpful, share it, and share your stories as well. Take care.